Next topic is Rich Rod had some very interesting comments to say when asked about Rodney Gallagher. I was waiting for someone to ask him this question. I've been waiting 2 weeks for somebody to ask him this question, and I'm glad somebody finally did. There's another question I want to be asked too that nobody's asked, but we might talk about that in a minute. But someone in the media asked him, Rodney Gallagher played some defensive back last year, played some corner. Is he going to do that? And I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, if Rodney has to play cornerback, then we didn't do a good enough job filling that room. And a lot of people took that as him taking a shot at last year's staff. I didn't really take it that way. I just think he took it as in the present moment and his thoughts on that. Did he go too far with those comments? Was that a shot at the previous staff, you think, or what are your thoughts?
So I'll first say that it's a good question. Whoever asked that, it's a good question. It's a legitimate question. And I will say that his response was a legitimate response. I don't think it was too far. I mean, listen, he's got the reins. He's got the keys to the car. Technically speaking, he can take shots if it was at anybody. I got to be honest, though. I don't know that he meant it disrespectful. But listen, Rich Rodriguez hasn't been shy about how he felt about last year's West Virginia football team. So if it was a little bit of a shot, he talked about didn't see him play much. He talked about turning it on a couple times and it just wasn't good enough. He talked about watching the bowl game until it made him throw up. And now with the Gallagher comments about if he's playing this, we didn't do a good enough job recruiting. So if it was a shot, if you will, it's technically not surprising to me because it's not really his first gotcha comment about last season. But listen, Rich Rodriguez is going to call balls and strikes. I mean, he just is. I think that's one thing people love about him is he's not going to sugarcoat it. Now, you may not like his response, but it's going to be black and white. You're going to know what he meant when he said it. So, but he's got a really good point, and the cornerback position was something that listen. We all had eyes last year. We saw that was a weakness, the defensive secondary. We know that, and if we knew that, Rodriguez knew that, and he made a point in the portal to talk about it and to get players and address the needs. And I guess the last thing I would say, Couz, is what? Kudos to him for putting it on his shoulders, right? I mean, he's not going to blame the kids. He's not going to blame Rodney. He's going to blame himself and his staff that, hey, and we talked about this last year, that when Jordan Leslie was there, he started to kind of throw some shade slowly at defensive players. And I'm not here to say that they don't get any of the accountability because they should. But we said several times last year that, hey, you guys recruited these players. So there needs to be a little hand up accountability there too. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I guess the final thought is I think it's kind of refreshing that Rodriguez put it on himself and his staff and said, hey, if I've got to convert him back over, that's on me. I didn't recruit the right guys. I'll take the blame for it. So I actually kind of find it a little refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, I find his honesty, his transparency, his bluntness, whatever you want to call it. Because, and look, I think you said this on our last show or one of our last shows. I don't want this to be a Neal Brown bash fest. But I got so frustrated with him turning everything into a positive. Like everything was always sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
When it's almost like it made me at times feel like he was maybe questioning is not the right word, but questioning our intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we can watch the game and tell everything's not that good. You know what I mean? And then, and at times it just got so, and I think the whole fan base got tired of that. I mean, West Virginia fans and every fan base, people who watch football a lot are usually pretty smart, a lot smarter than sometimes coaches give them credit for. Now we may not know the X's and O's but we can tell if a unit or a team is playing good or not, right? We're not that dumb. And at times I felt like he thought we were dumb. And I don't think that's what he was doing. I think that's just his personality. I think he likes to stay
Agree.
positive. I
I
think
agree
he's
with
just
that.
one of those guys that, tries to keep everything positive. That's, he didn't like negative questions in press conferences and things like that, but I love having a coach and Coach Rod that is honest. If the guys played like garbage, he'll tell you they played like garbage.
Yeah.
And the guys already know it. He's told them that already on the field. So it's not like he's telling us something that is a lie or that
Right.
he's doing it behind their backs, or you know what I mean? So and he does it without calling he does it without singling guys out necessarily. I mean, I don't think he does it in a disrespectful way. He's just like, look, they didn't play good enough, and they were soft. He used the word soft multiple
Yeah.
times the other day in his press conference, and I love it, man. And I think some of that is just where he's old school. He's been around a while, and he's at a point in his career where he
Yeah.
probably, you know, doesn't care. I don't want to say don't care, but doesn't care what people think about him. Is I guess where I'm going. As much as what he cares about winning, and he cares about doing his job well, but he's not going to care about what anybody thinks about him and how he answers questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe he's motivating through the media too. Some coaches do like to do that.
Yeah. I've used the word refreshing a couple times in prior episodes about it. And to me it is, just because I like that, call it as it is. And he's not given a lot of information in these press conferences so far. But he has given little glimpse into that, like talking about players running out of bounds in practice to save tackles. He says, heck no.
We don't do that.
We don't do that here. We don't do that here. Early on, gosh darn it, he couldn't really name their names, but he talked about running backs. We got to play tougher. We got to be physical. We got to be more hard edge. Talked about how they got to be faster. They got to be more athletic. And it's early. But to me, I find that, because I agree with you. I lean more towards it was such a just the personality of the previous staff that it was all good, positive, positive. And I think that carried over. I may maybe get a little carried away here, but I think that carried over into not that Rich Rod won't do it, but the team events, everybody coming to Neal's house, the cookouts, and it's not that teams don't do that. It's just it was one thing after another that was just positive, 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 versus somebody just looking at you and say, you screwed up. You need to play harder. You're not hard edge. You need to make a hit. We're not running out of bounds. That's soft. So I can appreciate it. And as we get later on into the summer and we get into camp next year, into camp, I'm excited to see once he actually learns their names, how more in depth on the coaching and the praise and the criticism, because he's fair. He's fair. So, like I said, refreshing is a word that I've used a lot, and it's good to see. But to the original question, I don't think it was too far. I think it's Rich Rodriguez honesty, and if we're being honest, he's 100% right. Listen, because we had this conversation last year. Neal Brown and his staff went out and got several guys in the portal to play cornerback and safeties and defense back, and we even thought, is Rodney that good of an athlete, or did we recruit wrong? Is he taken away from his offense? And if you'll notice later in the season, he progressed more as a receiver because he gave up the defensive side of the football. And I think Rich is smart enough to see that. So I don't think it was too far. I think it's just honesty.
I agree 100%. 100%.